organizations like ICICI Prudential, GE Money, Kotak, HDFC Bank, etc. And currently he serves as a Deputy Manager Real Estate with McDonald's India. With his rich management experience and institution building capabilities, we are proud to have Sri Praveen Shashidharan as the mentor of Bhavan's IEDC. Sir, I cordially invite you to take over the session.
Thank you, Anne Maria. A very good morning to all of you on the call, especially respected Rajgopal sir and the other faculty members. I am privileged, and I express my heartfelt gratitude for this responsibility that you have given me, because like I was talking with sir before the session, this step of starting the IEDC in BRIM is a great step forward for the institution, and it is a huge leap for the institution actually. So a lot of good things are expected from this initiative, and being able to be associated with the initiative right from day one. I mean, that's a privilege which which I can't actually express enough in words. So I feel very privileged for this opportunity which I've got. So today, to start off with this session for the IEDC, we would be discussing about a topic which, I mean, I had actually asked Deepa ma'am regarding what is it that you guys want to know. So she had given me a few pointers on basically some questions or some topics that you guys wanted me to speak on. So using those, using those points that you have given, I've kind of like prepared for a session, for a talk on what to expect during your entrepreneurial journey. Now, being an entrepreneur, it is not a sprint. I mean, it is rather a marathon. It's a long journey that it's going to be. I mean, it's not something which you just start off on a whim and then you stop. It is going to be a long journey, and there are a lot of things that you can expect on it. Now, the thing is that out of all these students who are attending, there might be people who are really interested. They already have an idea and they want to take it forward, and there might be some people who are kind of like maybe on the fence, kind of not yet decided whether I need to go for it or not, and thinking of the pros and cons and things like that. So my session today on what I'm going to talk about, I would be giving you in my experience, according to my experience of the managerial experience that I've had, and a little bit of entrepreneurial experience also I have. Using that, I would be giving my perspective on what it is that you can expect in an entrepreneurial journey. That is what I intend to do. Now, because I am already familiar with you guys, I think I have addressed both the batches at some or the other point in time. I'm not, getting into introducing myself or anything. The Anne Marie has already told you about whatever I do. There's only one addition which has happened since the last time I have met you guys. It's that I got certified as a business coach, and I am associated with Action Coach Global, which is the largest business coaching organization in the world. And we, as business coaches, we aim to help business owners achieve higher profits in their business, improve their business and all that. So the same methodology can be used for startups and basically scaling up and all that. So that's what that is something that is a new skill set basically which I've added to myself, and something which I'm focusing. I mean, I actually have started focusing on right now, and going forward that is what I intend to do. So that's the only thing which I would like to add about me. Otherwise, you all know about me. So I think I'll move on to the session. Now, again at the beginning of the session, like what I was I was talking to Rajgopal sir, I would have loved it if this was a face-to-face interaction, because I really miss seeing you guys. I mean, it's all some alphabets and stuff which I'm seeing in front of me. Unfortunately, not able to make out your faces. So because as a speaker, we always derive energy from our audience. So, and then only we would be able to project some energy to you. I mean, this this digital platform is not very conducive for that. But I will try my best, to put across my ideas and give you that give you my thoughts. So again, like I said, this is not a an academic kind of a presentation. So this is going to be more of a it's going to be a more practical oriented kind of a thing, and it's based upon my experience. There can be other people who have other perspectives about it, but this is in my experience whatever I'm going to share. And preferable, and this is something which I would like to be a kind of an interactive kind of a thing. There are limitations in this in this format that we have in this what you say digital format that we have. You will not, I mean, if all of you unmute, then it becomes a cacophony and we will not be able to hear that. But then I would encourage you guys to use the chat box, because I want some kind of feedback coming in that, whatever I'm saying is reaching there and something else. By the way, I forgot to actually ask, I mean, it was, like housekeeping rules. Am I audible to everybody? I mean, are you guys able to hear me loud and clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Fine.
Praveen,
So,
you're very clear and loud.
yeah.
Very clear. Okay, carry on.
Okay. Yeah, that is what, in this format, I think the first question that we need to ask. Anyways, okay, great. I see some responses on the chat box. So keep that coming in, because I need to get some feedback from you. So I would be looking at the chat box and while I'm talking. So I need your your responses over there. So to start off with the presentation, I'll just share my screen. Are you able to see this? Okay, so yeah, I think everybody is able to see that. Now I just move to. Okay, so like I said, this is the topic that we're talking about today is what to expect on an entrepreneurial journey. So to start off, just a second. So we'll start off with the definition of an entrepreneur. Okay, so what do you guys think an entrepreneur is, or who do you think is an entrepreneur? Again, some answers in the chat box, please. If you can unmute and talk, great. Hello? Guys, are you hearing me?
Yeah, it is clear.
Yeah, so I don't see any responses on the chat box also. So that is why I was just wondering.
It is coming now. It is coming.
Yeah. Okay. So because I prefer that this is innovative. I mean, this is an interactive kind of a session, so that is why. Okay. So Kasturi is saying as someone who can bring ideas into action with the help of innovative ideas. Bharat says a person who has passion in doing business, a person who starts, innovates, leads a businessman with innovative ideas. So yeah, so whatever you guys are saying, it's all these are all true for an entrepreneur. So to put it simply, it's any businessman can be called an entrepreneur basically. But as per the Oxford dictionary definition, this is what an entrepreneur is. This is what Oxford dictionary defines as an entrepreneur. It is an individual who undertakes to supply a good or service to the market for profit, and the entrepreneur will usually invest capital in the business, and he will take on the risks associated with the investment. Now, this has been derived from a French word. I'm not very good in French, so I'll not try pronouncing that. But it's from a French word called which means to undertake. So from this, like what you guys said, it is a businessman, and a businessman who begins something, who begins a new business, and it is to supply a good or a service to the market. And the intention of starting this enterprise or a business is to make profit. So it is not social service we are talking about. It has to be, there has to be a profit motive behind it. And another significant thing, according to his definition, is that he takes on a risk also. So there is some risk associated with that. It's not not something which is guaranteed to give him profits. So it's based on his belief or his ideas that he goes forward. So that is essentially what an entrepreneur means. Now, why entrepreneurship at this point in time? Now you would have started noticing probably that there's a lot of let's say a lot of push being given for entrepreneurship. Even at the central government level, state government level, everybody. I mean, if you look around, there's a lot of push being given for entrepreneurship. Now, why do you think that is so? Can somebody? Can you guys type on the chat box? Why do you think that entrepreneurship is being given such a big push at this point in time? Now, if you see, if you think back, if I think back to my parents' time, maybe your parents are maybe younger than that, but if I think back to my parents' time, it was always people used to push for a government job. That point in time, the aspiration was to get a government job, get settled, and all that. Later on, when it came to our generation, I'm talking about my generation, not your generation. It was the push was on getting MNC jobs because there's a lot of status. The government job thing earlier was because it was a secure thing and your life was supposed to be settled. It was so prevalent that some people would get to marry only if they had a government job, that kind of a thing. Or then in Kerala, it was people had to be abroad or something like that. So that is basically for your social security or your financial security kind of. When it came to our generation, my generation, it was we were all aiming for getting into an MNC, 6-figure salaries, all that stuff. So the growth and all those things which is associated with that. Now, if you look at it, the time zones that I'm talking about, when my parents would have been of their getting into an employable age, that point in time, India was just kind of like out of our independence, just kind of moving forward. So there was this socialist ideals and things going on that point in time. So mostly all the enterprises was run by the government. There was not much of private enterprise at that point in time. Private enterprise was there, but then it was not very small. There were not many small or micro entrepreneurs or something like that. It was like bigger people who had private enterprises, but then otherwise, everybody wanted to be in a government job, and most of these utilities and most of the companies were also run by the government. So that was the state of the economy at that point in time. Now, you fast forward to my generation, kind of like 10, 15 years back. That is our post-liberalization, globalization and liberalization. There were a lot of companies which came into India. All these foreign companies, MNC companies came into India, and then they started expanding. So that point in time, they required a lot of people to employ. So there were more opportunities available in that. All this BPO, ITES boom and everything happened that point in time. So we were all focused on that. Now we have reached a situation where where India is moving into the next, it's leaping into the next stage. Now, like I said, okay, so I was just looking at your responses. Bharat has said more entrepreneurs, more development in the country, more GDP growth. Kasturi has mentioned it creates more employment opportunities and creates more competition in the market. So you guys are right. So exactly the one of the problems that we in India face today is employment generation, because we I think we are the second most populous country in the world. And we kind of like have the world's largest young population, so to speak. So how do we generate? And a lot more. So every year, many people are coming into the into the employment pool. So creating jobs for all these people, it will not be possible with only the MNCs. And anyways, government has started divesting from their stakes in government-owned enterprises, because government has realized that. The job of government should not be running businesses; it should be actually running the country. Basically making policies which is conducive for the growth of the country. So they have started moving away from that, and the MNCs any which ways, with whatever advances in technology that have come up, even in manufacturing sector, or look at even coding and things like that in IT also, there are lot many advances which has come, due to which the number of people which is required to do a certain job has come down. So productivity has increased of people. So you need lesser number of people, and so generating employment opportunities over there is going to be difficult. So the only other option that we have, that India has, is to basically get people to employ themselves. That is what entrepreneurship is all about. Encourage people to start enterprises of their own, so that they get gainfully employed. One thing, and second thing, they also create employment opportunities for other people in the market. So like what you said, okay, more business means better product services. Yeah. Okay. All those points that you guys have mentioned over there are valid, and there's a reason behind the government pushing this. That reason is, number one priority is for employment generation, because if there is growing unemployment in the country, then we will not be able to grow as a country or progress as a country, and it will lead to many other problems. So that is why even at the government level, government is pushing for this entrepreneurship, and that is why we have these the initiatives like the innovation and entrepreneurship development cells, and the Startup Kerala mission, all these things supporting entrepreneurship in the country. So that is the significance of entrepreneurship. So all of you coming out of college might not be able to get an MNC job. So then what? I mean, then you should be thinking of opening your own enterprises. And so government is providing you the support for that. Is providing till this point in time, or let us say maybe till about 5 years back, government, or I'm not talking about any particular party or anything of that sort, but generally government was not so supportive of entrepreneurs, or creating this kind of a scenario where they were encouraged to start businesses. I mean, it was just people are encouraged to get into jobs only. But last 5 years, because they are also they realized this kind of a push is coming for the entrepreneurship, and there's no better time than now to be an entrepreneur, because the entire system is getting tweaked in such a way that it supports entrepreneurs. When you have many schemes coming up for entrepreneurship now, even students are encouraged to get into entrepreneurship. So all this accelerator schemes, and even the incubator schemes that the government runs, these kind of, they give you preference they give you support for the first 2-3 years. Then there are tax breaks also the first 2 years, I think. And so all these kind of initiatives are there, which will help you to actually get set up and start moving. So that is why there is no better time than now. So moving on. This is a concept, which is there in our Action Coach Business Coaching. So this is from our Action Coach Business Coaching that I've taken this slide. So we call it the levels of entrepreneurial development. So I mean, this is kind of like, you can maybe say journey which an entrepreneur takes. So it starts at a level which is said as -1 over here. I mean, it is a student. So like you guys at this point in time, you are learning. So you're not productively employed or anything. So that is why it is called a level -1. And you would be gaining skills and knowledge and everything. You would be spending time for that. And post getting all the skills and acquiring all the skills and knowledge, you might start, the person might start working for a company, to get some kind of a work experience. Now, work experience of when they work with the particular company for some time, they get to know how things work in the outside world. Otherwise, prior to that, as a student, it would have always been a theoretical knowledge. When you become an employee, you are getting some kind of a practical knowledge, basically. So after spending some time as an employee, that person, if he has that entrepreneurial bent of mind, then what happens is, after spending maybe a couple of years as an employee, he would decide to start his own enterprise. And that probably, he would start at a level which is called self-employed, in which, that he starts a business in which only he is the I mean, sole proprietor. He's the only employee, and he himself is employing himself and doing the business. Now, to give you an example, it's a simplistic example, but then you can take the example of a kirana shop owner or something like that. So maybe the person starts a small kirana shop, and kirana shop in the sense, in Malayalam we would say palajarikku kada, something like that. So then it will be the owner who would be sitting over there. He would be having it's a provision store, and he is running the provision store. And after doing that for some time, possibly then what happens is that he wants to grow. I mean, he has a mindset to grow. Then what happens is that he expands his scope of business. He converts that provision store into a supermarket. Then he requires more number of people to come in. I mean, he'll require more employees, so he'll start employing more people below him, and he becomes kind of like a manager entrepreneur. I mean, he has a managerial mindset, and he's managing people over there. He's managing the entire business, and he's working in the business along with that. Now, once the supermarket reaches a particular level, or a level in which he thinks he wants to grow further, what would we do? I mean, he would generally go for opening more number of branches. I mean, it would be, he would expand across geographies like 3-4 branches or something of that sort. So when that happens, what happens is that him working in the business might not be possible. I mean, exactly full time in the business might not be possible. So we will employ some kind of other managers below him, who are given the responsibility of each branches, and he goes to a level of being an owner. I mean, basically he is working on the business than in the business. So basically he would be looking at the strategy of expansion for his business, how to take it forward and things like that. So that level is something which we call a business owner mentality, or business owner level. So at this level, and he's more looking at giving the direction to the business, not into the day-to-day activities, more into the strategy part of it. How can you expand more and things like that? Now, once at that level, he spends some time and he starts to get more profits at that level. What happens is that now he has surplus profits available with him. He starts investing in other, maybe other businesses, maybe businesses of his friends, or he starts investing in property. He buys commercial property and lets out the commercial property. So those kind of stuff would happen. So that level, when he reaches that level, it's called a level 4 kind of an entrepreneur, where he's having his own business. It is running on one side on its own because of the systems that is put in place, and then he is also investing the money from that in other businesses, different sectors, like a kind of like a diversification kind of. So at investor level, what he's doing is he's making more money from his surplus which he's got from his original business. Now, when this happens, again, once you are in that stage for quite some time, again you start generating surplus profits. That's when you move to the level 5, the highest level of an entrepreneur. And it's called a true entrepreneur, something in our terminology. It is an action code terminology, but then we call it a true entrepreneur. At that level, what happens is that because he's already, he's getting enough profits, he has got an asset-based bill. That point in time, what happens is that he starts supporting other entrepreneurs, people who are coming up with new ideas. He becomes something like what you call today a VC, or an angel investor or something of that sort. Now, Ratan Tata, Mr. Narayana Murthy, Azim Premji, all these people are now at this kind of a level where their companies are all running at at a particular level, and they might have divested some of the stake also from that, and they have that money with them. So they have formed a fund which is for encouraging other new entrepreneurs, and they invest in those ideas. They help these entrepreneurs come up. So that's when you actually become a true entrepreneur in the sense of the word. So that is level 5 entrepreneur. So this is just for you guys to understand how an entrepreneur, once you get into an entrepreneurial journey, what will be your path like? I mean, in terms of what will be your growth like? I mean, because if you go into an organization, the HR might give you a presentation in terms of, okay, you get into as an executive, you start as an executive, then you move into the assistant manager, that kind of a thing. So similarly, something connected to it. This is what you can look at if you are getting into entrepreneurship. This is probably a path that you can take. Now, it is not necessary that all the people, all entrepreneurs would go by this this ladder only, or this kind of step-by-step progress only. There are people who go straight from student, they go on to a business owner and then upwards. There are people who move from self-employed directly into entrepreneurial level also. There are different options possible, but this is a natural progression which, which we are talking about. By the way, guys, if any of you have any doubts or anything with respect to what I'm talking about right now, you can anytime, pause in between, and I mean, you can basically unmute yourself and ask me any questions. So till now, whatever I have said, I hope you guys have got whatever I've said. You have any doubts with respect to that, you can ask. Okay, I'm not getting any feedback, so I think I'll just move forward. So, okay, so now we come to what are the essential traits of an entrepreneur. Basically, you guys had asked regarding what is the psychology in entrepreneurship. I mean, so that I am assuming that you want to know what is the traits that an entrepreneur should have. Now, each and every entrepreneur in this world, they're different from one another. There are a unique set of traits which make up any entrepreneur. So no two entrepreneurs are completely alike. There are a lot of traits which would be different, and a lot of traits will be required, again, depending upon the sector in which you're working and all that. There are a lot of things which would be required. But here, now what I am going to discuss over here is basically those traits which are basically, these are absolutely essential if you're going to be an entrepreneur. There will be other traits also which are needed for an entrepreneur, but then these are kind of like, these are any which ways, traits which you can't do without if you're getting into entrepreneurship. So I'll just start with, so number one, definitely is confidence or belief in yourself and the vision that you have. So this is absolutely essential for any entrepreneur, because the entire business model hinges upon you and your confidence, because you are the driving force behind that business. If you are an entrepreneur, you are the driving force behind that business. You have to be entirely confident upon your business model and yourself and the vision. So it goes without saying that this is one of the most essential traits of an entrepreneur. And okay, I'll come to that. So that is one, the number one trait that any entrepreneur needs. The second trait which I think that an entrepreneur requires is obviously leadership, because it's all about leading teams. You have to take the lead. You have to be the first person in the business. You have to basically take the entire team forward, take the entire organization forward. So, and people look up to you basically. I mean, all the other people that you employ are basically going to be your followers. So the thing is that the leadership quality should be again high. There should be one of the hallmarks of an entrepreneur, basically, so to speak. And then coming to the next one is obviously you have to be a good communicator. Now, when I say good communicator, it is also listening. Listening is also involved. And also, talking. So both the aspects are involved. I mean, you basically have to be a good listener, because you need to listen to your customers. That's where you will get ideas from. You will have to listen to your employees, because there might be employees on the field who give you a better idea to do things in a better way. So listening skills are very important. And apart from that, you also have to be a very good communicator. I mean, you have to put your ideas across in crystal clear terms to the person who's sitting opposite you, especially what you say, essential when you are going for some kind of a funding. If you're going to get some kind of funding into your business, you would definitely need to be a very good communicator, because being a good communicator, confidence also has a part to play in that, because if you're not confident, then your communication will not be clear. The clarity will not be there in your communication. So a good communicator, you should develop those communication skills so that you are able to put across the ideas. Because after all, at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is all about converting ideas into workable business models. So for that, communication is definitely essential. Coming to the next one, he has to be a team player. Now, when I say team player, because you would be employing a lot of people, And you cannot, I mean, when being an entrepreneur, you cannot be something kind of what I say, too much of a boss kind of a thing. I mean, you have to be that you have to invest in their development also, and you have to because this when you go into an entrepreneurship kind of a scenario, what happens is that it would be changing. It is going to be a very dynamic scenario, and things are going to develop as you move forward. So you have to have that rapport with your team, and you have to push them on, and you have to be with them. So be a people's person basically. So you have to be a team player. So the team playing mentality should be there for an entrepreneur. It's very essential. And then then next one. I mean, this is a very important one. Passion for learning. Now, many of us think that okay, you only require an idea to start a business and then be successful. But if you examine, if you go into the lives of all those entrepreneurs who have made it really big, all of them are people who have a very regular reading habit. So that is something which all of these people have. That is something which is common across all these people. And many of them in their later stages, once they reach, like what I said, in a true entrepreneur stage, they also write their memoirs, or they write some kind of management book or something of that sort. So why is this passion for learning required? It is because you have to be open to new ideas. The world around us is changing very rapidly. So a lot of new concepts being coming up, and things which you might not be aware of. You always have to keep your mind open. When you read, the thing is that you get a lot of new ideas which you can put onto your business, improve your business. So that passion for learning should always be there. So he has to be a lifelong learner, so to speak. And then number 6, the next thing is optimism. Definitely, entrepreneurs are people who would say a glass is half full. I mean, they would never say the glass is half empty. So that optimism should always be there, because basically entrepreneurs have to find out what you say, a potential in an established environment. They have to find make a business model out of something. I mean, already the conventional things would be going on. I mean, you are basically causing some kind of a disruption. Now, okay, to give you examples of all this, and basically this and whatever traits which I'm talking about later on, have you guys? I hope most of you would have seen the latest Surya movie which has come in Amazon Prime. If you're not, immediately after this, try to see it, because that's something which, if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, you definitely have to see that movie, because it's kind of like there are some exaggerations and things in the movie. That whatever creative liberty that they've taken, but then it gives you a very good idea about what are the struggles that an entrepreneur would have to go through. Now, have you guys? Anybody seen it? I mean, can I get some responses on the chat box? Okay, yeah, fine, great. So I think most of you have seen it. So so whatever I'm talking about over here in terms of the traits, you look at the Surya's character in that movie, Maran. Okay, so Maran's character, if you look at Maran's character, all of these traits would be exhibited by that character. At some or the other point in the movie, you'll see that confidence, he believes in that idea. It's a leadership, and he's a true leader in that. He takes a decision on the fly. He's a great communicator also. I mean, he goes into that aircraft and he has that, he directly speaks to that person, the Paresh Rawal's character. So he's again a team player. He rallies his people behind him. He's with his team all the time. You see him on the tarmac whenever in the plane and on the tarmac when they take him off and all that. He's a team player, and he has extreme passion. I mean, that character has extreme passion. Now this movie is based on Captain Gopinath's memoirs. So try to read that also, because that will give you a even more better perspective. So this is it is a true story, but then creative liberties have been taken in exaggerating some things, but then you get the drift. I mean, this is what an entrepreneur would be required to do, or this is what an entrepreneur would face. Now again, the next one, persistence. Now that entire movie, from the first scene till almost the last scene, you see this value, I mean, or this trait being, and exhibited by that character, persistence. So many setbacks. All through these setbacks, they move forward and finally they get their plane in the air. So many different problems they go through. So I'm not getting into that detail because probably you can have a discussion on that movie itself. You can actually have a kind of like what you have a book discussion. You can have a movie discussion. What are those taking each what you say situation that he goes through, and then what is the value that he's exhibiting over there. So that kind of a discussion can happen later on among new people. So persistence, definitely. Again, risk taker, huge risk that is taking, because he whatever little property and stuff that he has, he's putting it up for his as security for a loan, and huge risk, because any entrepreneur, there is a risk being taken. There is always a trade-off. I mean, typically all people who go into an entrepreneurship line, they are very smart people. They are not people who are dumb. They know their stuff. They are very good, knowledgeable people. They are good at studies and all that. And what happens is that if they have not taken an entrepreneurship line, they would have got a very good job somewhere else in some MNC or something. They would definitely have got a job. So they have taken a risk in terms of not going for that and coming into their own business, following their dreams kind of. So they're risk takers. Then, if you are getting into entrepreneurship line, be prepared to face and overcome failures, or rather learn from failures. Look at failure as a learning method, or it is a stepping stone to success. And you would have to learn from your failures. I mean, failures will definitely be there because you're going to try something new, something that nobody has tried before. That is what innovation is all about. That is what entrepreneurship is all about. You will have to face failures. So be prepared with. I mean, have a mentality that okay, there could be failures which come up. No, I mean, it should not be that you're expecting failure and getting into this. It's not that. But then you be prepared. The thing is, it has to be connected to persistence. Come what may, you will achieve your goal. That is what your mentality should be. And failure would, whenever failure comes, you analyze the failure, go back to the failure, see why it failed. Because there is always a reason behind the failure. And you have to understand where is it that, you went wrong, or, where is it that it didn't go according to your, thought process. And then correct that. So next time round, you move forward from there. That's how it is. So that mentality should definitely be there. I mean, it should not be that, only if it's a guaranteed success, I'll get into this. So that kind of a thing does not work for an entrepreneur. Okay. Number 10 is good networker. By good networker, I mean that you will have to, at some point in time, you'll have to get, even if you do have, sources of capital, if you're taking your enterprise big, growing it to a larger level, then you probably will have to get in touch with investors and things like that. So you have to have that networking skill, how to get introduced to people, talk to people in a way that it, captivates their attention and things like that. So basically, networking skills has to be developed. So that networking, definitely, entrepreneurs are good networkers. Then coming to system oriented. So this is again for entrepreneurs who are in the long run, who take their organization to larger heights. Definitely, they have to be system oriented, because it cannot be a people dependent kind of organization where if somebody leaves from your team, then that function is not working. So that cannot be how it is. You have to put systems in place. So that your organization is system dependent rather than people dependent. So system oriented is definitely a mentality that entrepreneurs should have. Again, customer focus, because your entire idea might be based on a customer need. Not might be, it should be based on a customer need. Basically, if you look at it, all enterprises in this world, they exist just because they are satisfying a customer need. The moment your product or service stops to satisfy the need of a customer, you start losing business, and that business becomes irrelevant and it fails. That's how businesses fail, basically, because they lose the customer focus and they're stuck up in what they were doing. Now, for example, like if you take the example of Kodak, Kodak was the #1 manufacturer of photographic films. Now, maybe I think 10 years back, 10, 15 years back, it was all, film cameras that people were using. And there was nothing called digital or anything of that anything of that sort at that point in time. So these people, they were the number one manufacturers of photographic film, which was used in all kinds of cameras that point in time. They were an industry leader in the sense, there's nobody else. I mean, it was like a monopoly for that company. Then digital cameras came. Even after digital cameras came, they didn't change. I mean, they didn't basically think about whether the customer would move on to a digital camera or something of that sort. They went on doing their stuff in terms of focusing on only photographic films. They never ventured into that line of digital photography or anything of that sort. So companies like Canon, Nikon, all these companies, they started coming out with digital cameras, cheaper versions of digital cameras that removed the entire need for film. So now I don't think, maybe you guys have not seen a film roll also. So it reached that level. I mean, there's no, it reached that level, and these people, like kind of like overnight or in a space of like maybe 5 years, they become totally irrelevant. They moved on to other things. Now Kodak is no longer a photographic film company. They are into a lot of other things. I think diagnostic equipment. Then I think now they have entered into smart TVs and things like that. So they are a late adopter. So that kind of a thing would be there. So customer focus, definitely an entrepreneur should, even after his idea succeeds, he never should lose sight of that customer focus. So he should be keeping his customers as they are the cause of your, the reason behind your organization basically. So you should never leave that customer focus. Okay, highly adaptable. Now, entrepreneurs are definitely highly adaptable. They are the most adaptable beings on the planet, is what I would say, because challenges come from very unexpected quarters. Look at the last 8 months. I mean, or whatever. I mean, beyond March 22nd. So our entire life was disrupted, and this nobody saw it coming. I mean, because this is nobody, even in their worst nightmare, would have thought that some virus, because of one virus, everything would come to a standstill and it would be locked up in their home and things like that. So these kind of challenges will always be there in business. I'm not talking about. I mean, this is a black swan event which has kind of like affected everybody's lives. But apart from that itself, even in a normal, even in a business as usual kind of a scenario, also there will be a lot of changes which will be happening in the market, new competitors coming in, new products getting launched and stuff like that. So you will have to be highly adaptable. Now, for a good example of this is when the pandemic came in, Swiggy and Zomato, they were all basically into food delivery. They were focused on food delivery. They adapted because food delivery people, because of the kind of like apprehension of having food from outside, people start kind of like people are no longer ordering food from outside, and their orders came down. So they got into grocery delivery, and there was a service called Swiggy Genie which was introduced. I mean, it's like an errand. I mean, they run an errand for you. You can basically ask a Swiggy guy to go somewhere and collect a file or some documents and then bring it to your home and deliver it to your home, something of that sort. So those kind of services they introduce. So that is kind of innovation on the fly, and that is being highly adaptable. So that quality should be there in any entrepreneur. Okay, then the 14th point which I'm talking about over here, it's most entrepreneurs, they're not specialists, and they don't need to be specialists also. I mean, basically they have to be more of a generalist. They have to have an idea of all the workings of business, all the parts of business like marketing, sales, finance. I mean, they have to have an idea because they need to know how to read a balance sheet, how to read a profit and loss statement, all that stuff they need to know. But then if you ask me, do they need to understand derivatives and stuff like that? Maybe not. That depends upon which kind of like which sector they're working in. So they have to be more of a general, but then they have to have an idea about all this stuff, and they should be able to basically, they should be able to learn from people who are experts in that field. And generally, if you see, all these good entrepreneurs, what they have, the people they have as heads of different functions, those guys would be real experts in those fields. They would be knowing much more than this person who is the owner of the business, and he doesn't mind it at all. I mean, basically, the entrepreneur learns to leverage the strength of his team. So it kind of like connects to being a team player also. So he's a generalist more than a specialist. He doesn't need to understand coding entirely. He doesn't need to make that product to be to be successful as an entrepreneur. Now, this is the last point which I want to talk about in an essential trait of an entrepreneur. Any successful entrepreneur would have a strong support system. Now, why? What do I mean by a strong support system? A support system, in the sense, it's your fallback mechanism. Basically, like I said, the life of an entrepreneur is going to be kind of like uncertain. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of challenges would be coming in. So he would have, end of the day, he would have to have somebody, he or she again. I mean, I'm not talking about he only. He or she would have to have somebody with whom they can share their, these experiences, and basically get some maybe feedback or some direction, because there will be times when the entrepreneur is kind of like not so sure about where to go, how to go, and things like that. So that point in time, your support system is what will actually keep you going. The support system, when I say, it can be family, it can be a partner, it can be even a mentor also. Kind of an official mentor that you have, to whom you can go and discuss regarding this. I mean, but it is definitely somebody who's going to be outside your business. It's not somebody inside the business, because people inside the business, what happens is that you guys are very emotionally invested in that business. So might be there reaches a scenario where you start getting some blind spots. You will not be able to see it as it is. So then you need to discuss with a third person who's outside this, who might give you a different perspective. So that is why it is very essential that a strong support system should be there. Because like I said, an entrepreneur, there might be scenarios where there is something which is called self-doubt. You kind of like start doubting yourself, even after all the confidence and everything that you have. When you go into implementing your idea, you start getting a small kind of like a thought at the back of your mind: is what I'm doing right, or is this the right path that I have to take? Those kind of things. So that self-doubt thing might be there. And then like I said, failure is a part of it. So whenever failure comes, even though I said there should be mentality of overcoming failure and learning from failure, we are all, end of the day, we are all human beings. We are emotional beings. So these emotions can get the better of us at points in time. So that point in time, looking at failure objectively and stuff like that, you might need some external help for that. So that, again, your support system will help you. And again, there will be financial pressures also. So kind of like it's like a stress release mechanism. Talk to somebody, you get it off your head. And definitely for people getting into entrepreneurship, there's something which is called delayed gratification. Now, what do you mean by delayed gratification? Because typically in people who get into entrepreneurship, you keep on putting your effort for a long period of time. I mean, you start seeing results maybe 1-2 years down the lane. So whatever effort you're putting in today, it will not give you an immediate result. In some cases it might, but then most cases it will give you a result maybe 2-3 years down the line, or even more. It depends upon what kind of sector you are, or what is your idea, and things like that. So there would be a kind of a time gap in which you feel that you're putting a lot of effort. There's nothing coming out of it for that. And especially if you are a person, definitely, even if you're not from a student to an entrepreneur, even if whatever entrepreneur you are, you would have your peers who are already working in some other corporate or something. You will see that those people are earning much better than you. I mean, entrepreneurship in the beginning is going to be little, not so financially gratifying might be. But the moment you make it big, the moment you make it beyond this point, you're going to be like several levels higher than the best, corporate person in that group. So that delayed gratification thing is also something which entrepreneurs will have to, what you say, cope up with. It's they will have to go through that and they will have to come out of that. So so for all these reasons, you have to have a strong support system. That is essential. Now, so these are what I feel are an essential traits of an entrepreneur. Now there are other things also which you can add to it. Again, sectoral stuff also which are there. Apart from this integrity and all these kind of things, those goes without saying that it should be there for. I mean, that is not just for an entrepreneur; it should be for any professional. Those qualities should be there. But then these things, I think you can't do without. If you're getting into entrepreneurship. And again, do not think that if you right now, if you're not having all these or any of these in the sense some of these qualities might not be there, some of these traits might not be there currently in you. Don't think that you are not fit to be an entrepreneur. That's not what I'm saying. So these things you would have to develop on your journey of being an entrepreneur. This is all a mindset. I mean, this is now if you go into depth into each of this or each of these traits that you take, this is not kind of like a something which you're born with. This is something which you develop on the way. So it's all about mindset, how you tune your mind and how you can develop develop those competencies. That's how it can be developed. I mean, now if you are interested in getting into entrepreneurship, then start developing these. Start developing with these qualities. That's what I say. Now, okay. So that the previous slide, this was basically about psychology of in entrepreneurship. This is one of the topics that you had asked me to discuss. Now, this is my assumption that you were asking for the traits that an entrepreneur should exhibit. That is what I assume with respect to psychology and entrepreneurship. If there is anything else, if you guys are meaning something else, you can ask me now. I mean, if it was something else that you wanted to know about psychology and entrepreneurship, you can ask me. You can unmute and ask, or you can put in the chat box. Okay, I am not getting any response, so I believe so. This is what you guys wanted to know with respect to that topic. So I'm just moving on. So how do you begin as an entrepreneur? Now, beginning as an entrepreneur in the sense, there are possibly three paths that you can take, or three methods by which you can become an entrepreneur. One is a startup, which is an entirely new organization and everything, which you start right from scratch. The next one is buy a setup. Buy a setup meaning okay, about startup I will cover in a little more detail in the next slide. Before that, we'll go to the other two. The next one, the second one is buy a setup. Now, by buying a setup, it means you buy a business, an existing business with all its assets and all the employees and everything. You buy a business and then you start operating that business after you buy it. Now, this is something which is not very prevalent in our country, but outside countries, in more developed markets, this is something which happens. People sell their business. Now, our country has a variation of this, which is basically you inherit your business from your family. I mean, it's a family business. You take over the family business, and then so there's an existing setup over there, and you start running that setup right from day one. So that is another method in which you can become an entrepreneur. And the third method is franchisee. Now, franchisee again, it's a startup kind of a thing, but then the difference is that in a startup, the idea is entirely new, entirely your idea or your team's idea. Now, franchisee is something where you are taking up a brand there is a brand which has already proven itself, and there's a product or service which they provide. You take up an outlet of theirs. You take up what you say. It's called a franchisee only. I mean, you take up a outlet running their systems and processes and using their brand name. I mean, you would not be using your own brand name. You would be using their systems and processes, and then getting into the business. So the advantage with respect to being a franchisee is that there is a proven methodology behind that, because depending upon which is the brand that you choose to associate with, they already have a brand goodwill which is attached. So you don't have to invest in terms of brand development, and there are already set systems, processes, everything available. So you just have to implement that over here, and it's just about managing the company or managing the enterprise. So it's easier in that sense, becoming a franchisee. So it helps you to become an entrepreneur faster. If you don't have any kind of any idea as such, this is one option that you can try. I mean, franchising is the one option which you can try. And there are a lot of there are websites like Franchise India, Franchise Bazaar, and all this. If you just get onto these websites and if you browse through it, which is the sector that you're interested in, you can filter it by sector, and then you will be able to find different options, different brands which are there. And so they would be giving what is the initial investment which is expected and what is the support they provide. All that things would be there. So it is an easier way of getting into business or becoming an entrepreneur. Now, like I said, startup is a totally different ballgame. I mean, because you have a certain idea which is there. It is a kind of like it's entirely new. It is from scratch you're building. So startup is, out of these three methods which I discussed, that startup is the most difficult one, and also the one which will take the most amount of time to to start and stabilize and grow. But then the benefit is like what I said earlier, the delayed gratification part. When you finally make it big, it is going to give you returns which is exponential. I mean, much higher than what you can expect in the other two. So these you will get exponential returns. The risk is also very high. Risk is in comparison to the other two, also the risk is also rather high in a startup, because it's all hinging on one idea, and if it works big time. Otherwise it doesn't. Then you would, in that case, I mean, you would have to pivot to some other idea and then move forward. So that there are n number of examples for that in our what do you say, in our Indian startup space itself. So like Zomato started as a platform which was it's called a restaurant delivery. I mean, sorry, restaurant discovery platform. So initially, when they started, they used to give what you say, details regarding the restaurants. When you could just go in, you could search. I mean, you could find the details regarding the restaurant. The menu would be there, but you couldn't order from that. I mean, you would be getting a fair idea of, and the ratings of the restaurant would be there. So you would get a fair idea of what the restaurant was, what kind of cuisine they serve, what is the average, expense that you can expect, and all these things were what Zomato covered. That was the only thing which was there on Zomato, and Zomato was there in Dubai also, I think in Middle East, and they were also there in India. After Swiggy came with Swiggy was a delivery model right from day one. So they were they were the problem that they were attacking was getting food. I mean, they started in Bangalore, and it was the problem that they started attacking was getting food delivered to techies, who were very busy to go out and have food and things like that. People were too busy to actually go out and get food and things like that. So they would have these sudden cravings at 5 o'clock in the evening or something like that. I want to have a donut or something of that sort. So Swiggy was the answer for that. Swiggy, I mean, they would even buy. I mean, initially, it's not now, but initially when they started in Bangalore, they would even deliver one donut or one coffee to you. I mean, that was how they started. And when they started and they started scaling up, Zomato saw that opportunity in the space of food delivery, and they started a food delivery vertical. So today you have both on there. If you go into the Zomato app, you will see that there is a delivery part of it, and there is a part which lists only the restaurants. I mean, those restaurants would not be there available for ordering the food and things like that. So that kind of a thing would be there. The pivoting would have to happen. I mean, if you see that one strategy is not working, then maybe move in another direction. And it has worked for them also. I mean, these two are the only two players now in that space. So now building a startup. Again, I'm going to list a few steps over here, which usually building a startup would take. Now this is not in any way this is not something that document which is sacrosanct or something like that. There are other ways in which startups can be built, not following this step-by-step kind of a thing. This is just to give you an idea. I mean, this can be one of the ways in which you can build a startup. So you start with identifying, because it's going to be a, entirely new idea. You start with identifying a target market and the problem that you're trying to solve. Like what I said in terms of Swiggy, they saw that there was a market for this kind of getting food delivered to techies in Bangalore. Saw that opportunity over there, and they started it as that kind of a service. Later on, they moved on to much bigger things, like you all know. But initially, when you start off, you have to identify a target market, a target customer, a target personality of a customer. This is what your customer is, and this is a problem. And that problem that you're trying to solve, that is a need that the customer has. Or in the existing scenario, in the existing marketplace, there is no service or product available, which kind of like satisfies that need. So identify that and identify the problem. So the problem definition and the target definition, target market definition has to be done initially. Then you have to go into an in-depth study, study of the existing conditions. What is happening in the market? What are the, what are the comparable services available, if there are any, or what happens in the exact in the market at present. So for that, you might have to, go for some customer surveys, because you have identified a target market, the target market, then you have to get into kind of some surveys and then identify the exact need to find the gaps in the market and things like that. Well, after you have done that, you would have to, come up with options for solutions. These are the kind of solutions that probably you have for this. And then you would have to work on the feasibility of each solution, because solutions also has to, kind of like, it has to be workable. That solution should be practically possible. I mean, it should be practically implementable. So like in that example, what I said of Swiggy, now, if initially one of the solutions they proposed was getting a drone to deliver something to you, that point in time it was not possible. Now they are thinking about that. They are testing that, that is happening in some places. But then, initially when you begin, that was not an option, probably an option. So they came with an option where they were getting people, getting executives, employing executives who would deliver it to you. So that is proposed the solutions. Then what you say, POC or proof of concept, you have to develop the proof of concept. So might be you have to develop the initial version of the software and work on the flow of the activities of your startup. How the fulfillment happens of the need of the customer. So that is what is called proof of concept. And basically, it should be an implementable kind of thing. I mean, it's kind of like if it's a product, then it's a dummy that you. It's that initial prototype is what you call that would be equated to proof of concept. Then the next thing is, how do we make money out of it? Now you have solved the problem. The thing is, like I said in the beginning, an entrepreneur starts a business not just to solve the problem, it's also to make money, make profit out of it. So you have to make the monetization plan. You have to work on how would you monetize it, get money out of it. Then again, you would have to work on the detailed business plan, like how much of business in how many years, where do you reach, in these number of years, and work on the projections. What is the kind of projection that you have for this business? Where do you see the business in 1, 2, 3, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. So all those kind of projections that you have to make with the business plans. And then basis those business plans, you would have to start running your trial run or your what you call your beta testing or whatever. So you do this, you start your startup, or you begin your operations in a smaller geographical area. You basically you get into implementing it, and you study what are the problems that you're going to face, because whatever you do, you cannot preempt all the problems. You can think about, these kind of problems might arise, that kind of a thing you can think about, but then you will not be able to visualize all the problems that come up. So once you start implementing, you will get a different set of problems. So you do a trial run and you do the beta testing, and then you get you incorporate the learnings. You take the learnings and the feedback from your existing customers, and you refine the product, you refine the service, and you refine the business model. So this is kind of like a loop. I mean, it's kind of like a feedback loop which is there. So you do the trial run, beta testing, take the learnings, whatever each problem that arises, you find a solution for that, and then you move forward. Once you have refined your business model and things like that, you would then be able to be in a situation where you have kind of like solved almost like 80% of the problems that you're facing over there. Then you scale up. Because I think, with respect to the example of Swiggy, initially they started with riders who were employees of, their own business. But then later on, they moved to a model which they are doing right now, which is they are no longer employees. They are kind of like freelancers who are working for Swiggy. So they work with the app. I mean, they basically, they're paid for each delivery that they make. Earlier, it was a salaried model. So that kind of a thing. So this is a learning which they got, when they were operating in only one city, and because that was not breaking even, that was not giving them any returns in terms of things. So they moved on to that model where they were adding people as freelancers. So then the advantage of that is that there are part-time people also who can come on. Then your fleet number increases without investing into a fleet. So that kind of a thing, so that kind of scenario. So that is how the loop is in terms of how you refine the business model. And finally, then once you have kind of like frozen on the business model or fructified a business model, you start focusing on reaching the break-even point. How that is your expenses and your earnings should match, and then you aim for profitability. Now, this is a very simplistic view which I have given over here. This is, a lot of permutations, combinations will be there in building a startup. There might be other steps also which come in between, and this is a very generalized view. But then this is intended more to give you guys a feel of, this is what you can expect, or these are the basic steps which are involved, kind of a thing. Specifically getting into, when you guys get into starting your own enterprise and things like that, there would be specific a different step that you might to take and might have to take and all that. So that will be there. Now, what happens generally in the startup? Okay, the startups, when they go for expansion and things like that, they start pitching. I mean, or the seed capital and things like that, people start pitching at the stage when they have a proof of concept and the business plans. Once you have the proof of concept and your business plan in place, you can start probably approaching your venture capitalists and angel investors and things like that. You get your seed capital, then your Series A funding, Series B funding, all that stuff is there. So that process would run in parallel with this. I've not mentioned about that over here because that is a choice. Might be you have enough capital available with your self available with you, then you don't need to go for all that, because when you go for venture capitalist funding and things like that, you are also, what you're doing is that you are giving some part of your ownership to somebody else. Of your company's ownership, you're giving to somebody else. So that is a choice which you will need to take, whether you need to go for that or not. So that kind of investment and things, and pitching for the investment and everything would come after you make the proof of concept, monetization plan, that initial trial run, and everything is going on during that. So this is just a very simple, like I said, very simplistic view about what is the what are steps which you have to go through for a startup. So any questions regarding this? Any clarifications that you guys need regarding whatever I have covered so far? Yes, no. Okay, I'll take silence as no in this case. So, okay, so there was one more step where after you become profitable, you can also expand into different geographies. So that is the next step. Okay, so now this is again, this was something which you guys wanted me to cover. Opportunities of entrepreneurship. I think the specific question was opportunity of entrepreneurship in each areas. So I gather what what I've understood from this is that you basically want me to talk about which are the sectors which have a high potential for entrepreneurship. So am I right? Oh wait, One second. So Bharat has put in a question, in identifying target group, what all things we must consider. So target group, in identifying target group, see, Bharat, it depends upon what is the, what is the exact idea, or which is the sector that you're trying to, or what is the problem that you're trying to address. Now, anyway, problem identification would have to happen. Now, when you identify the problem, then you would naturally have identified who is being affected by that problem. Okay, so those people would become your target group, and then you develop a personality of that with respect to the target group, because that will help marketing and everything later point in time. But then that's how it gets done. So, specifically, because it depends upon a specific problem that you're trying to address. That's how you would address the, how you would come to the target group. Have I answered your question, or you need more, or if you want to further elaborate on that question, you can. Okay. Yes. Okay. Fine. So that's how it happens. So, okay, like I was asking about this, opportunities for entrepreneurship. So you guys want to know about the sectors that are, like vibrant, and sectors that are potential at present. Is that what you mean by the, the question that you had sent? I mean, who was the person who asked that question? So if that person can unmute and maybe. Okay. Anyways, I'm not getting any feedback. So I think so. I'm assuming that what you wanted to know is basically the opportunities in different sectors, or what are the sectors which are there's a high opportunity for entrepreneurship. Now, so this is according to me. This is again based on my observation and my experience. So again, we have seen the last 8 months have been very, very tough. A lot of business, all the businesses were affected, and everything had almost come to a standstill. And then now slowly everything is restarting. Now so this was kind of like the worst phase that the world could go through, or the business world could go, because I don't think there's anything worse than this. Because even if it's a natural disaster, it would have happened only in one particular area, and that area would have recovered. This was like the entire country was shut. But then, even in this kind of a scenario, this is the worst case scenario which can happen. Even in this kind of scenario, there were like 3 sectors which I noticed was really vibrant in terms of there were still stuff happening, and those are like pillars of the economy, pillars of our existence, maybe we can say. So one of those sectors is agriculture, definitely. Agriculture, food production, food processing, everything, all those activities connected with that. Now, for the simple reason that we cannot live without food. So agriculture definitely was one sector where there is a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurship. There are a lot of problems associated with the existing system that we are following, right from production to consumption. So there are several problems are there in that chain. And of late, even our government has enacted some, basically, made some changes in the existing laws. So corporates can get into the farming aspect, and maybe into contract farming and things like that. Even Kerala government, post the COVID, Kerala government is, giving more emphasis on producing our own food. I mean, in terms of, because we can't say importer, but then we get all our food from outside Kerala. I mean, it's not grown inside Kerala. So even Kerala government is pushing initiatives by which people have these terrace gardens and stuff like that, and maybe you start growing your own food, kind of a thing. So this kind of a worst case scenario, that will definitely help us. We don't need to depend upon supplies coming from outside the state. So those kind of things are there. So agriculture and food processing has huge potential. That is one sector which has huge potential. Now, which part of it you want to attack, which problem you want to attack, you will have to study the entire thing and then decide on that. But then that is one of the sectors which is there. The second sector, which again, again saw a lot of activity happening, was healthcare and wellness. I mean, it's not just the hospital part of it, but generally, how you keep yourself, how you build your immunity, and how you be healthy, basically. So that healthcare and that wellness part, that also has a lot of potential, because all these systems of, these alternate systems like naturopathy, Ayurveda, all this is starting to get a lot more attention. So how do you, scale these things up? How do you evolve a service around all these things? There are some startups who are doing diet plans, helping you to eat healthier, things like that. So that wellness and healthcare space again has a lot of potential. The third sector, which I see, I mean, these are like evergreen sectors. These will always have opportunities in that. The third sector which I see is what we are doing right now: education, and now actually we just called ed tech, because education technology, because it's become fused with technology. It's no longer a classroom education alone. I mean, it is all through remote. I mean, what we are doing right now, we are in different places, but we are connected on a platform. Apart from this, there is self-learning platforms which have come up. Lot of investment going into that field. Like Byju's was a lot of investment which Byju's got, and Byju's, they got into acquiring different smaller startups also. So that kind of thing has happened. So edtech is definitely education, and edtech, that sector also has a lot of promise. It has opportunities available over there. These would anyways, these would always be there. These sectors will definitely be having a lot of potential. Now, apart from these, the beauty about entrepreneurship is that wherever there is a customer problem, there is an opportunity for a business model. Only thing is that you will have to work it out. How you solve that problem and how you monetize it. Now, what I'm saying, what I'm giving over here is what I feel is a high potential kind of a, where there is a high need for it. Talked about, what, if you look around, there is a pressing need for waste management solutions. You look at Cochin, you go along any road, you see waste being dumped here, there, everywhere. Nobody is bothered about processing it or whatever. I mean, that is the case with respect to almost all the cities in Kerala, not just Kerala. I mean, if you go across India also, we are having that problem. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be, I mean, nobody seems to be working out any business model around this, or trying for any solutions, because right now the solution is only dumping it in some landfill and maybe burning it and stuff like that. So those are all, in my opinion, those are all very, very short-term solutions. There has to be some kind of a concerted effort to convert this into something usable. Or there was a plan for a waste to electricity plant in Cochin, which is all stuck in red tape, just not move forward. But something of that sort, something on those lines, or how do you process all this? How do you convert it into something which can be used? Because this is something which is going to affect us even more in the days to come. So that has potential, but how would you attack it? Because that needs a kind of like a scientific bent of mind also. I mean, scientific thought process also behind it. But then, if there is a scientific solution, then how would you able to make it into a business model? That is some thought process which can be done. So if you have friends who are, maybe in the engineering college or something, they have some solutions around this, and think about how can you associate with them, form a startup which can monetize that. That's something worth thinking, because it is, the money aspect is also there. I mean, there's potential in that, and apart from that, it's also a social cost. And so the next one is again renewable energy. There's a lot of what you call emphasis being given on renewable energy, because fossil fuels and everything will get over at some point in time. So there's a lot of pollution which is there in our country. So renewable energy, what can be done in renewable energy? That that is another sector which has potential. Now, apart from this, India government, if you see, has been pushing for electric vehicles. So that entire ecosystem around electric vehicles. Now the thing is, we're talking about going entirely electric by, I mean, sometime back we were talking about 2025. But that's something which I think is very tough to achieve. You know, only electric cars coming onto the scene and everything like that, because we don't have that ecosystem which is built. Now the thing is, when I say electric vehicles, you know, there needs to be an entire ecosystem which has to be built around that. So I'm not talking about you guys get into a business model where you make electric vehicles and sell it. It can be something which can enable that people to use electric vehicles, like you have fuel stations. It can be charging stations. You know, how can you monetize that kind of a business model? Establish a chain of charging stations, something of that sort. You know, this is just a thought process. So so that is so electric vehicles is one thing which in India government is pushing on. And again, off late, another one you know, very interesting sector which the government is pushing on is toys, because it seems that all the toys that we are getting currently in India is imported from China, and we definitely want to reduce our dependence on those imports from China. So government is pushing big time on toys. So there's some thought about some toy manufacturing clusters coming up and things. So you can think of something on those lines. You know, how, you know, these are just start points to certain ideas that they can give. So that's about opportunities of entrepreneurship. That's about sectors which I think, you know, and are potential. Now I see a couple of chats which have come in. Jisma has asked, what do you think is crucial and challenging step in building an entrepreneurial career? Okay, Jisma, so the crucial and challenging step in building an entrepreneurial career is number one, starting out. You know, because starting off in that direction, you know, taking that decision and taking that first step, that itself is the biggest challenge. Once you decide and you take the first step in terms of, you know, registering your startup or getting people on board to work out your idea and things like that. That is the most difficult part, you know, deciding that, okay, I will go in this direction. Okay, I believe in this idea and I want to move in this direction. That is the most difficult part. Once you are over that, once you are, you know, taken that step, then the rest of the things would, I think, you know, fall in place. So this is where, again, your support system and everything will play a big role. So that is what I think. So have I answered your question, or you want any specific, you know, in terms of if you're talking about skill and things like that, skills and stuff, in my opinion, you can always learn it. You know, it can be acquired. But this mindset thing, that's the you know, that's the one which is most difficult to attack. So just my hope I have mentioned. Okay, fine. Farid Rahman has sent me, I have a business idea and planning to convert into a business plan. I have the roadmap, but still have confusions regarding cost, revenue, and investment. So what are your suggestions to deal with it? Is crowdfunding good for investment? How to get a good investor for business project? What are the pros and cons of startup loans? Farid, are you from Bhavans or from somewhere, you know, from an external? Can you just unmute and talk? Farid? Okay, you're from Bhavans. Okay, see, Farid, I think, you know, this we'll have to take it offline, because if it might not be very interesting for the rest of the people who are sitting over there. And this is something which is very specific to your, because I need to know what your idea is and what it is that, and because you say you have a route map, then I need to know what is the route map, what is the idea. Then customized to that, we'll have to work out the strategy. So that is the reason why I'm not entirely getting into that, because right now, whatever generally the steps that are to be followed, I have already, you know, covered in that previous slide over there. But in your specific case, since you have a business idea, you have something figured out, you present that to me, or we'll have a discussion on that, maybe offline sometime later. We can see, you know, what is it? Does it have? Or I can give you the you know, what is the next step that you need to take? You know, whether you need to, like you said, you have confusions regarding the cost, revenue, and investment. So how would you estimate all that stuff? There are, you know, there are certain methodologies that you can use for all that. So that guidance, I think that has to be a person-to-person kind of a thing, one-to-one kind of a thing, which has to be taken offline from here. So ditto with all the other questions, like, because depending on all that, the other questions, the answers to the other questions would change. Because crowdfunding, if you ask me, is it a good investment and things like that? See, it is low cost. Crowdfunding is low cost, but then it depends upon what is your product or things like that. If it's just a product, then it's fine. You can send the product across to them after you get the crowdfunding and things like that. But otherwise, if you are going to give shares in your company, then it becomes a different ball game, because it kind of like your ownership gets diluted. A lot of things are there. A lot of things that you need to think about it. So it's something a little vast that you've asked over there. So for that reason, I think there's it is better that we take it offline. Is it okay with you? Okay, I see a yes sir over there. I assume. Okay, fine, great. Okay, so just moving ahead. Okay, so there was a question from your side. What are the things to follow when we convert a small scale business to a large scale business? Okay, so I see it's not very relevant at this point in time, but then because that's after you start your startup and you reach a certain level, you reach a stable level. But then because you've asked the question, I just give you a small overview. This is how we do it in Action Coach. We have something which is called 6 steps process that we use for basically converting from a small business to a larger business. Now, there are like 6 steps that you have to go through. Now, level 1 is like mastery, then it is niche. I mean, what it means is basically, because when you're converting from a small scale enterprise to a large scale one, first you have to set your base right. Your foundation has to be strong. So for that is what is called mastery. So at that level, we work with the business owners to attack 4 areas basically. One is the destination, what we call the destination mastery, which is basically the vision, mission, goals of the organization. Okay, what is the vision that he has? Where does he see his business 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever there. So you set that vision, mission part of it, the first thing that you do. Then when you go into the finance aspect, the money mastery that we talk about, getting his financial dashboard in order, getting to know his break-even point, when he starts to make money and all that kind of stuff. We train him in getting that right, the finance part. And the third part is time mastery, where just basically, how the business owner would be able to optimally use his time, without getting overwhelmed and things like that. That is something, because if you see, right now you might not understand, but then people who are into business for quite some period of time, or who have businessmen as parents or something like that, most businessmen will have 3 problems in their life. One is money, the second one is time, and the third one is team. So these would be the 3 basic problems that they have. Either there would be a want of capital, or want of profit and things like that. That is what I call money. The second one is time, in the sense they are all overworked. They're spending too much time in their work. And the third thing is team. Team basically, they're not satisfied with the existing team that they have, the people that they have. So they need to do something about it. So these are basically 3 problems that they would be having. So based along this, so we attack all these, 4 what you say, basic areas in mastery. We set that process over there. We set so once you complete that mastery level, what happens is that at that level, when we work with a company, the basics are all in place, and then you can move on to the next level. Next level, we call it niche. Now in niche, it is all about marketing. Now, without getting your basics right, there's no point in spending for marketing, because if you spend for marketing, you get more number of customers coming in, and your basics are not right. You are okay. Sorry, I missed about the last, the 4th, pillar that we work on in mastery is delivery mastery, which is basically your operations excellence. So we work on how you, deliver your product or service without errors and things like that. So how you deliver it consistently over time. So after this only we move into a marketing level. So like I said, if you spend for marketing without setting the things in the bottom, what will happen is that you will generate more number of customer complaints and you lose business. So that's what will happen. So first you do this, then you get into, you define what is your USP, your unique selling proposition. And then you get into strategies of getting more leads and then converting more leads, all that. So actually speaking, this graphic that you're seeing over here, this itself is one, it's a seminar which we do for almost, 2 hours and things like that. And then based on this, we work along with the business owner on a long-term basis for a year and more, and we set these things right. One by one we attack this. That is how our coaching works with respect to businesses. So next level we call leverage. Now in leverage, what we mean is that you do more with less, or actually you put systems into place. So your organization becomes systems driven rather than people driven. Now any startup in the beginning, it will be to a certain level, it will be people driven because your core team would be driving the things over. But it should not be in such a level that one member of your core team leaves and your entire organization collapses. That should not be the case. So you should reach a situation where there are systems in place. Another person who is coming in would be able to take it from that point. So that way we bring in, we implement systems so that you drive efficiencies and things like that. And the fourth step is where you correct any issues with the team, you train the team, maybe recruit more people if required, reskill, upskill, all that stuff happens in the team, team level. So you set the team right. So once all this is done, then what happens is that you aim for getting synergies from this. You monitor the system such that all this work together in a way that it produces exponential results. And that's how it gets into results. So this is generally what we would follow when taking a organization from a small scale enterprise to a large scale enterprise. So okay, so I think that that I have kind of like covered, because I'm not getting into too much of detail. Like I said, there's a lot of things involved in that. Now, final thing that you guys had asked me was digital entrepreneurship. This I'm little, I don't know what you mean by that question, digital entrepreneurship. Now, if you ask me, I'll give you my perspective. Post-COVID, now every business has to have a digital interface also. It's reached that kind of a level. Now, earlier, digital was seen as a disruptor. I mean, digital has come in and it has disrupted the entire, status quo. It has created difficulties for the existing business and all that. Especially in retail, in what we were involved, what I am working in and all that. Retail was seen as a disruptor. E-commerce was seen as something which was against or kind of like affecting the normal traders. But now it has reached a level where you can't do without e-commerce. I mean, e-commerce has become an enabler. From disruptor, it has moved to enabler. Now, without e-commerce, you won't be able to, because now people are, they are afraid of going out, and that fear factor is still there of going into shops and buying something. Or that old, if you look at malls itself, you'll see that footfalls have dropped big time. So that is because people don't want to go into places where there is crowd and things like that. And even if people are coming into places like that, there is a restriction on the number of people who can sit in a restaurant, number of people who can enter a shop, and all that things that they are in place. So you have to have a digital aspect to your business model. So digital has become a complementary part of all the business model. So digital entrepreneurship is not something which stands by itself. Now it has become a part of any entrepreneurship, any and every business idea. You have to have a digital aspect to it. Otherwise, bare minimum, you will have to go for digital marketing at least, because all these people are, now a lot of people have moved away from cable television and, watching TV to online, watching OTT platforms, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. So if you have to reach these kind of people have started, maybe people have stopped reading newspapers. Maybe your generation is more, used to reading it on digital platforms. So that way, there has to be digital aspect to it. So in that sense, digital entrepreneurship is something which is very necessary. Now, in this again, like I said, from a disruptor it has moved to an enabler. There's a live example which I am, aware of. There's a person whom I know who was into teaching drawing. I mean, he is basically a sketch artist. And he was, into teaching people how to draw, pencil drawing and stuff like that. So pre-COVID, what he used to do was he had taken a space on rent and he was running classes over there. I mean, he basically had batches coming in and he was taking classes in a classroom kind of a scenario. Once when COVID hit, the entirely his business was shut down. There was no way that he could have run classes because entirely even now it is not possible. So there was no option for him to move forward. So what he did was he started a YouTube channel on which he started, putting up videos of him sketching and stuff like that. And through the YouTube channel, he started getting inquiries, people asking him for taking classes and stuff like that. Then he started doing the classes online over Zoom or some other platform. And today, what is happening is that he is earning probably 5 to 6 times more than what he was earning earlier. And he's let out that place. What place that he had taken for rent, he's let out that place. I mean, he's left that place. He's he's not even thinking of going back to that older model. Because the reason is that in his that space that he had rented out, I think it's around 250, 300 square feet that he rented out. He was paying around 25,000 rent per month. Today he's not paying any rent. He's sitting at home. He's doing it over the over his laptop and whatever other camera and stuff that he has. And when you're doing it in a physical environment, you have something which is called a capacity constraint. I mean, you in the 300 square feet, you can only accommodate so many people, maybe 20 people, something like that. So now here in this model, he does not have a capacity constraint at all. He can run a class for how many number of people that he wants. And he is still, and even if he is getting paid lesser than what his earlier students were paying him, it is kind of like it is giving him an exponential revenue. So instead of 10 people, now he might be taking class to 50 people at a time. So this is something which has really happened. I know that person, personally. So this is an example of digital entrepreneurship. Maybe you can say this is the digital entrepreneurship. That is a very exciting space. How would you leverage this digital, tools that are available to you? That is a thought process that you can have. So this is what I expected. I mean, what I think you guys wanted to know about digital entrepreneurship. But there might be some specific questions. If somebody has specific questions, please ask. And again, I'm at the end of my presentation. I mean, I don't have. I mean, these are the questions that you asked. So So in anything that I've covered so far, if you have any questions, you can unmute. You can ask. It's a Q&A session. It's open. You guys can ask me whatever you feel like. So who wanted to know about digital entrepreneurship?
So it's not me who wanted to know about digital entrepreneurship, but then I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
The power of personal touch is actually lacking in terms of digital entrepreneurship, right? So how bad will it affect, or how good can it affect in terms of today's era?
Kasturi, like what you said, this is something which I mentioned to sir also before we started the session. Because this if I had been standing in front of you in your class, I would not. I feel a distance over here. I mean, in terms of you getting a response from your side, I think the interaction would have been much better. You would have gained, I think, more value from me in a physical setting in this kind of interaction. I agree entirely to what you say. That what you say, that personal touch is lacking in the digital thing. So again, for that very reason, this especially in education, this digital education will not replace the physical education that is there, the physical education system that we had. This is an interim measure that that we have adopted because we don't have there is no option for us to go for a physical classroom and things like that to arrest the spread basically. But then there will be parts of this digital experience that we have created which will remain, like for example, like self-based learning, some kind of training I mean, especially this is more like an interaction kind of this. When you talk about entrepreneurship, it is something which is very subjective. Because there has to be specific inputs that has to be given. There has to be specific questions that you might have. So these kind of things, that will still have to be done over a physical kind of a setting, and that will be more effective over a physical setting only. But then, if there is standardized learning which has to be learned, that can happen. If it's a self-paced kind of a learning, it can happen over that part will be there. That part always will be there. Maybe like your tuitions, or like what Byju's is doing and things like that, self learning, and some specific skills that you want to pick up and things like that, digital has a role to play. So it will be complementary, it will not replace. It is not that all the schools and colleges are going to like shut down and it's all going to be online. That will never happen. I don't think that will ever happen. If you give an example, I have two kids. One of them is in 6th standard. The younger one is in 1st standard. Both of them are in Bhavan students. Both of them are attending classes since the last so many months over Google Meet. The elder one has classes from 8:30 to 12:30 in the afternoon. The evening 6 to 7:30, the younger one has classes. Both of them somehow want to go back to school. They don't want to sit at home. They don't want this. I mean, in the beginning, they had that excitement that you're getting to use the laptop, you're getting to use the tablet. All that thing was there. Now everything is gone. They definitely don't want to go into the digital mode. So like I said, it will be a complementary part of it. And again, when you come to even a physical scenario, there might be some concepts which will be difficult to show you and kind of like explain to you. Those things will have a digital interface. It can be like holograms or projections or something like that. With that, you can, especially in science, when you're teaching science, what you call STEM, in teaching that, it has a big role to play. That is what I think is. It cannot replace physical touch. This is only a response to a problem. That's what I think. Does that answer your question, or you need any other elaboration?
No, sir. Thank you so much. That's clear.
Okay. So, any other questions? Anybody? I guess that is a no. I mean, you guys don't have any questions, is what I think. So, before closing, I have something else to actually talk to you about. So what's your action plan? I mean, in terms of, you guys are all members of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Development Cell, and more or less you have some ideas in your mind, and you have decided that you want to move along that direction. So what should be your action plan? My suggestion, now this is again my suggestion. Number one, you guys start reading more, because like I said, that opens up a lot of possibilities for you, and opens up a lot of it kind of like, it widens your horizon. It gives you a wider viewpoint. It helps you to think better. To start reading more, in terms of and reading what is also more important. I'm not talking about reading your textbooks. Textbooks definitely you would be doing as part of your your course. So that will definitely be there. But then start reading this management books which are available. I think our library should have a lot of a good collection over there. And if you guys want to know about what specifically to read, you can get in touch with me. I can give you some pointers of some books that you can read, which will help you become entrepreneurs. Basically, improve yourself, because it's about entrepreneurship. Like I said, it's a journey. It is not not something which you just get into and then you get out of it, or it's become an entrepreneur and that is over. It's not a destination, it's a journey. Now along that journey, you will go through a metamorphosis. You will go through continuous change. Now to go through that kind of a continuous change, you have to keep on improving yourself. It's about sharpening ourselves, because we are the driving force behind our business. So that sharpening has to happen for you. So for that, you have to read, you have to keep your minds open to new ideas, things like that. So start reading definitely for guys who are interested in being entrepreneurs. Even others, I would suggest reading, but then, if you're going into a corporate kind of job, then, the thing is, you would be basically following whatever plans that your company has made and just executing it. So that way you can get away with not reading. But when you are the person who has to make those plans, then you can't get away with not reading. So you start reading is number one. Okay, so this is something which will be more interesting for you to do than reading maybe. There's this series, or rather this program which is there called Shark Tank. I suggest that you guys watch it. There is one season of that available on Amazon Prime, and I think the latest season is there on Woot or something. So this is something which you need to watch. It will give you a lot of perspective on what entrepreneurship is about. What are the ideas, what are the different ideas that you can make into a business plan, how you present the business plan to an investor panel, what are the questions that an investor would ask, to you. So because this is not this is a program which happens in the US. It happens in the US. It doesn't happen in India. But then, our market is slowly I mean, actually not slowly. It is moving very fast towards that kind of a market. It'll be there in the next 5 to 10 years. It will be somewhere close to that market only, because that's the rate at which this COVID has only accelerated that change. That is what has happened. So watch this. You get different perspectives. Okay, you will see what are the kind of services that people bring it into a business model. Very interesting program, and will give you a whole different perspective. How to present your ideas to people, all that you will learn. Because these people who come over there, they are all entrepreneurs. They have there are people who have just an idea and they come in. There are people who have an idea which has reached some stage and they're looking for some funding. All that stuff is there. So there's some negotiations happening between the investors and the people who present it, and how you do the negotiation. All that very interesting. I mean, it will really help you. So I don't know if anybody is, in fact, watching, is a follower of Shark Tank. Anybody who watches Shark Tank? So this is what I said. If it had been a classroom, immediately
Yes,
I would have got the answer. Okay, Kasturi, you're watching. Okay, great, fine. So, for those people who are not aware, please start watch those episodes which are available. I think mine on YouTube also you will be able to find. It's a really interesting thing. Okay, on this final thing, something called Hult Prize. Okay, any idea what this is? Anybody heard of Hult Prize? Guys, answers? No. Bharat says no. So I assume nobody has heard about Hult Prize. Okay, so Hult Prize is actually, there's a business school called Hult Business School in UK. And this Hult Prize is an annual event. It's an international event which is conducted every year. Now it is kind of like it's a competition open only for students. And each year the Hult Prize team comes up with a challenge, basically a problem that they invite students to solve by creating a social enterprise. It's an entrepreneurship, it's a social entrepreneurship platform. So you basically have to look at solutions to that problem that they give you. That's a challenge. It's called a Hult challenge, and they would give you one topic, and this gets conducted over a period of a year. So students. I mean, it is only open to students. The existing entrepreneurs or businessmen cannot take part in that. So people who come up with ideas for that. The winning team gets $1 million to convert their idea into a enterprise. Whether you win or not is secondary, but even if you take part in this, this is something which will stimulate your brain, make you think, and these are these challenges that they provide. These challenges are aligned with what is called the SDGs, or Strategic Development Goals of the United Nations. So United Nations has come out with some 17 SDGs, I think. Which is like eliminate poverty, gender equality, those kind of stuff. So on these kind of topics, there would be a challenge which is given. Each year is a different challenge, which is given to students, and then students would have to work out, bring their ideas, and so it has to be an entire thing. So if your idea has to be workable, you have to work out the entire business plan for it, and you have to present it and all that. So what happens is that there are on-campus rounds which happens in some of what you say institutes across the world. But on-campus rounds is basically only for the students of that campus. So only those people can take part in that. So incidentally, even I didn't know about this. So I also came to know about this because IIT Bombay is one of the campuses which is hosting the on-campus round for this coming year. So they have their on-campus round happening on December 12th. So there are 2 teams who had approached me for a mentorship for that, and I'm mentoring those 2 teams. That's when I came to know about this HALT prize. So it is kind of like, it is known as a Nobel Prize for students kind of a thing. So I just show you that website. So you guys can just get onto the website and what you say, understand more about it. So this is the website of HALT Prize. So it is haltprize.org is the what you say is the URL. So this year's topic is actually food for good. So like I said, there are a lot of problems in the entire food production to consumption chain which is there. So there are a lot of wastages which happens, not many things. So in this, so anything connected to connected with food, the challenge is to come up with a social enterprise which will solve some of the other problem which is there in this entire chain. So that is the challenge which is given for this year. Now, on campus round, people from outside the campus cannot enter, but then you guys have the opportunity to actually, go onto this website, and there is that, the link that you see for apply. You can click on that, and basically maybe you can create. You need a team of at least 4 people, and you can think about taking part in this, because I would love to see, Bhavan's IEDC members taking part in this, because this is something more than whether you win or not. It is a learning experience. And this year there is there is a regional final which will happen. So this year India has one venue. Last year India did not have a venue in this part of the world. It was Dhaka, Bangladesh, which was a venue. This year we have a venue in Delhi. So if you guys apply, and if you follow those steps and get through, you can actually it's only you need to go to Delhi only for doing it. It will be a good learning experience, is what I think. People who are interested in in entrepreneurship, definitely you should give it a try. I've spoken about this to Deepa ma'am also. So I think Deepa ma'am will maybe interact more with you regarding that. You guys need any help with respect to the working out and things like that. I can give you some pointers and on what to work on and how to work on and things like that. So that's it from me. I think I've taken a lot more time than I should have, but it was something which is very, it's a very passionate topic, and I like, apart from the fact that it's this distance between us, I liked doing this. And that's the end of my session. Now I would request, I have put in a link in your chat box. That's actually a Google form link. It's a feedback form. So I want you guys to kind of go there and give your feedback regarding the session, because this is something which I want to keep improving. So what more you would have wanted, or how did you feel the session was, whether it addressed whatever you wanted to know, all that stuff, because I want to improve. That's a part of the feedback loop. So that's it from my side. So over to you. Thank you.
Praveen, every time, that is the best thing that this is Deepavanithan here.
Yeah.
Again, Hull Prize, definitely, as you have told, I have we have started discussions with students on that. Yesterday itself, we have taken it forward. And dear friends, students, here you maybe, in the future also you may get to speak with a lot of other speakers. But then one thing what Praveen sir has, when I have always felt is that every time he comes over, and speaks to you or interacts with you, I feel that he is speaking to himself only 15 years back. That is a kind of the sincere and passionate commitment that he is having, just like every other, most prominent member of Bhavan's family, I should say. With respect to the commitment to the students and every single aspect of our institution and its development. So, it is not like ending here or anything. Okay, if you have a question or anything, he's always there. He's our go-to person, of course. When I'm saying this from my experience over all these years. Always we feel that he's a person who is walking alongside us in every single aspect that we have taken, and always he has tried to put forth his best foot forward whenever we have has sought any help from him. So that is, it is not like any other speaker coming to you and speaking to you here, but then here is just like you have one of your seniors, a senior friend of yours speaking to you. That is why all the other senior students who have even passed out from the college has taken him as a mentor also. So, so please make use of this person out there. That is what I have to tell to my friends, my students. Okay, so here you have the right person. Who is, with the way he's speaking and all, I always often tell this to students also, because that the way you are interacting, they also know how that is one reason why they are not leaving you also, even after leaving the campus and leaving even the faculties. They are with you. So of course, we have to take it forward also. And I'll be talking to you in terms of other plans that we have.
Yes.
I'll be talking to you definitely. So I guess over to you, Anne Maria, for the rest of the program. Thank you.
So guys, please fill in the feedback form. I would want all of you to fill it in, if possible. That is something which I want from your side. Okay, Anne Maria, you can take over.
Good afternoon, all. All, as we know that good things come to an end in life, so is this seminar. On behalf of Bhavan's Royal Institute of Management, I take this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks to all those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this seminar, What to Expect on an Entrepreneurial Journey, organized by Bhavan's IEDC. At the outset, I thank our chief guest and resource person, Mr. Praveen Shashidharan. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence. We are thankful to our honorable head, nodal officers, CEO, colleagues, and innovators for their motivation. A special thanks to the organizing committee, teaching and non-teaching staff for their unflinching support and coordination. Our heartfelt thanks to our students for active participation. With these warm words and kind message, we move to the end of today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.